What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Abundant Journey podcast. It is 2024 officially, new year, and we're super excited you're coming along with us on the journey. We got a bunch of guests lined up, and one is today Casper Bahlmann, and he has an incredible story, both with a long endurance athlete professionally, but also he has been an investor in the self-storage space. But before we bring Casper in, Nick, how are you, sir? We're ringing in the new year. What's going on, man?
Hey, I am fantastic. Like you said, really, really excited about where we're going with the podcast this year and kicking it off with a bang by having Casper on.
Casper, thanks for jumping in with us, man. How are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, guys. I'm doing great. I'm actually doing great. I have a lot of excitement for the new year. I think, the 2023 was the year leading up to this year for us. So I don't think I've ever been more excited to start a new year than I am this year. So, but
I love it.
Yeah, but I mean,
I love it. Yep.
About me is not, I had a very, very normal childhood. I mean, my mom, dad, 9 to 5, mom was, they were divorced all my life. More or less, but didn't really have any entrepreneurial sort of touch in my early childhood. I always loved to work, though. And I remember going to school and all that, never really enjoyed that, to be honest. But I remember always waiting to be 13, because that's the day you could legally work in Denmark, where I'm from. And the day I was 13, I had a job lined up at the butcher store, the local butcher store in the small town where I grew up. And I started working there, and it would be, 5 in the morning before school sometimes. I would go there, I would work a few hours, and those were the absolute best days, because before I went to school, I already made $20, right? I loved it. But I worked about 20 hours a week or so, and I absolutely loved it. I was making
at 13.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, when you work 3-4 hours before you go to school, and then you have like Saturday and Sunday where you could easily bang out 10 hours, no problem. It was great. And yeah, I was making $5 an hour, but to me that was great money, So yeah, but I had a lot of fun there. I learned a ton, and I think I worked there all until I was 18. So after that, became a bartender while going through school, and had a bit of odd jobs after that, like both during the summer and between this education and the next education that I did, which was like an automation engineering education. So worked in construction and metal worker and all sorts of things. So all of this doesn't really have anything to do with being where I am today, but it was, I think, leading up to it, because that's when I started.
Totally.
That's when I started sports. I always wanted to go to the Army. It was my big dream. Special Forces, more specifically, and I was training for those to be accepted there. I was training. And I passed all the tests with flying colors. But then when I went into the doctor's checkup, I'd had a back injury, a serious back injury, a couple of years back, and then was not accepted. So I was like, God damn, what can I do to prove everyone that, I can really do this, right? So that's when I started doing triathlon and becoming an athlete. And I just found that I really enjoyed it, and I was pretty good at it. So I did that at the same time as I was in school for engineering, automation engineering, and I got better and better at it. I was then offered to go to Serbia to work for a year and take part in a transformation of a production facility in Serbia. It's like, I don't know, 18, 19 at the point, 19 at that time.
Wow.
Went there, lived there for a year, and I remember the phone call with this guy from an elite triathlon team that I applied to, where he said, I got accepted into the team. I was just ecstatic. And from there, I went back to Denmark, right? And it just became more and more of that training and triathlon journey for me. I remember
Mm-hmm.
seeing I remember seeing the first training schedule that this guy gave me, my coach. It was like 3 trainings every single day. And I looked at him, I have a full-time job, right? And he looked at me, he said, yeah, I know that, but your competitors don't. So what are you going to do about it? Uh, he said,
Wow.
if you, and this quote really stuck with me. He said, if you want to achieve what other people can't, you have to be willing to do or sacrifice what others won't, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
that stuck with me ever since. But okay, I made a deal with my job there. I was working at a factory as an automation engineer at the time, and I could do my first exercise in the morning from 5 to 7, and then I worked from 7 till noon, and then from noon till 2, I was allowed to do whatever exercise I had in the schedule, and then again worked until 4 or 5, whatever it might be, and then after that I could do my third exercise of the day. That's a tight schedule, but I think that was amazing.
Oh
That
yeah.
was an amazing time. I learned a lot about discipline and hard work, and I did a lot of competitions, and I didn't do well in all of them. But then all of a sudden, I stood at that start line of the first competition where my goal was to win. Right? It was Ironman Copenhagen. I remember it clear as day, and you know everyone was there to cheer me up. My family, everyone who was supporting me through the journey. I had a few sponsors at the time that really believed in me, and off we go. And I remember crossing the finish line. I came in second, which was disappointing to me at the time. But
Wow.
then the first place was disqualified for doping, so it was pretty amazing. And all of a sudden, I was standing there, and I was qualified to the World Championships. And just 3 months out, I had to raise like $20,000 or so, and I didn't have a dollar to my name. I spent everything on equipment and coaches, and everything I had was just poured straight back into you know getting everything ready for this race. So I was invited into radios and all sorts of things, and I spoke my case and got sponsored, and I raised the money, and I got out there to, it was on Hawaii, and I lived in this little hole in the ground sort of place because I couldn't afford to live at the hotel with everyone else. But it was amazing. I was there, right? And all of the people that were my idols before, just 3 months ago, these guys were my idols. I watched them in TV. All of a sudden I was racing alongside them. And I will say, not as
Nice.
equals. I got my ass whooped naturally, but it was still, it was still just being there, racing with them. It was amazing. So, yeah. And then on the flight home, after getting my ass whooped by the real professionals, so to speak, I I met my now wife in the airplane on the way home. Went back to Denmark, and 3 months later, I decided it was time to quit my full-time job. So I did that, and I moved to Moscow to live with my wife that I met 3 months ago. We were not married back then at all, but so I just moved to
Good.
Moscow. I did full time now for my training, and a little while ago I co-founded a company called Vuelta Mallorca. Back then, I co-founded that before I moved to Moscow. That was bringing people to Mallorca every year, giving them the experience of being a professional athlete or training as a professional athlete with all
Hmm.
the support of my sponsors. And that was my first sort of dabble into starting something on my own, which was great. It was fun. Living in Moscow a couple of years, founded another company in Moscow, Top Sport Import, where I leveraged all my connections in the European emerging sponsor brands and brought them into Moscow. Moscow is an amazing place, but they don't have any of the European brands or anything like that. So I brought that in there, and we sold a lot of stuff. But it was just not a moneymaker at all for me. It was just a lot of work and no real output. But it's still going on today, just without my interference. So after having lived there, what did we do? Yeah, after having lived there a couple of years, my girlfriend at the time and me, in 2020, we moved to the US. And
what brought you out here?
Yeah, so I think it was just time to leave Moscow. We wanted to start a family, you know? And I retired from sports. Like in that level of sports anyway, and I had an exit from the company Vuelta Mallorca that we started because it was built on me being an athlete and my brand, and you know, since I was not an athlete anymore, it didn't make sense to me. And
sure,
yeah, we moved over here, wanted to start a family. My wife is she's a citizen, so she went to school here in the U.S. and everything. So I applied for a green card, but it was 2020, start 2020. I mean, no one got anything done. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I wasn't able to do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the country. Then I would lose my space in the green card program. So I was just renovating a few apartments that my wife had bought many years ago when she lived here. So I was renovating those. You know, we bought a house together. I renovated that. But after a year, I got severely bored. And we were looking at, you know, what's the next best step for us? And we started looking into commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And we stumbled across self-storage really by accident. I think it was a post on Twitter. And it just came along and we started looking into it. I started, you know, hitting up people, you know, to learn more. I went to the conferences, and, you know, it just, the more we learned, the more it made sense. The asset class was great. And we started making offers on properties, on market, off market, whatever it might be. But I don't know if you guys were making offers on storage facilities in 2021, but I mean, I had a very hard time penciling those properties out with, you know, my level of knowledge and the margin of stupidity that I wanted for my first facility anyway. So we didn't get any buildings at all, any self-storage facilities at all. So we were like, what are we going to do? We really want to enter this asset class, right? Should we build it from scratch? Or what else could we do? So we decided to go the conversion way, self-storage conversion. And I had a technical background, so, you know, I could help with that, and I felt comfortable with that. But really the biggest barrier to entry when we went out and started bidding on these things was no one took us seriously. You know, I could make a bid on something that was zoned for self-storage in a great area, good saturation, everything we like, checks every box, but they'll come back to us and say, yeah, thank you for your offer, but, you know, so-and-so self-storage company LLC that developed 20 properties already made an offer as well. Would you either like to beat their offer by 20% and let us take a chance on you, or, you know, we'll just go with them. So that didn't work out, and that was a lot of offers that we made that just went that route. But then we started flipping it on its head a little bit. So instead of bidding on properties that were on the market, we started bidding on properties that were off the market instead, just reaching out to owners, starting to bid. Things that have been for rent or for lease for a long time, just started bidding them up on, you want to sell this, right? So finally we got a hit. We got our first facility in Cranston. I'm sitting in it right now today. I'm sitting here. Wow. And it took us 9 months to build it after we bought it. It was a conversion project. It's about 40,000 net rentable square feet, and we have an expansion on the way. So I I think that's, that was sort of where we were. And I'm very excited about
Yeah.
getting to that point. But then it was the lease up.
Mm-hmm.
It was not as easy to operate as we thought it was, I will say. We thought it would be a lot simpler
Sure.
and there's a lot more to it.
Sure.
Then I met a now good friend of mine, David, who's been doing self-storage for, I don't know, like I think before I was born almost. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He might have invented the asset class.
yeah, right. No, and I've taken some really, really good advice from him on operations, and I think he helped us a lot. Get this optimized the way
Yeah.
we wanted to, and I think we are at 50 and change percent leased up now in our first 6 months of operating. So no complaints. So yeah.
That's great. Well, I love the beginning here, and man, you've lived so much compared to most people, I think, who settle into their hometown and they get that 9 to 5 going and maybe work their way up the corporate ladder. So let's go back a little bit because I'd love to hear some of the struggles in that storage time and what you've learned. But one of the things we were talking a few minutes before the episode of the military and the rejection there, and then on top of that, the training that you went through. You really talked to us a little bit about how those lessons early on helped shape you moving forward and prepared you for ownership and entrepreneurship. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think my time as an athlete and everything, I think leading up to that from getting rejected from the military, I think a few of the most important things I learned during that time was the discipline it takes to, do 3 trainings a day, have a full-time job. The discipline it takes really transfers over to entrepreneurship. You don't have anyone, coming after you if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if you don't propel yourself or your company forward. No one is going to come and knock you on the head and say, hey, get moving, right? I think, doing what you say you're going to do and don't look back. I think don't be afraid to take a chance. Don't be afraid to make a decision. My dad would always say, the worst thing you can do with faced with a decision is to not make one. Even if you make the wrong decision, okay, you made the wrong decision, make the best of it, right? And that action paralysis is just something I left behind a long time ago. And I do make wrong decisions. I don't make the right decision every time. But the biggest value that I've gotten from that time is learning how to cope with making the wrong decision or learning how to cope with setbacks. Because I think everyone who has gone through, the entrepreneurship, and I think Moses Keegan said, crawling over broken glass period, he called it, like that beginning when you found your company and you work through that first few years or whatever it is until you gain traction. Setback is just a part of it. And what sets a lot of people apart is how they deal with that setback, how they cope with things not going your way. Do they sit down and, give up or find another, or do they find another way? I think that's one of the most important things I've taken with me, because you have a 7, 8, 9 hour race in Ironman. Things are not going to go the way you planned. I promise you. And you've been training for this one race for a year. And it is devastating if things, don't go right. You put so many hours, so much sweat, tears, money, sacrifice, everything into this. And you don't get another chance before next year. So, yeah, you have to adapt. So I think that's probably one of the most important things I've taken with me.
I love that. Going back even a little bit further, I mean, I think it's unique to hear part of your story being at 13 years old, you couldn't wait to work, and that was just something that was kind of in your DNA of wanting to work really hard. And I'm curious, just as you reflect, if that's, where did that wiring come from? Were you just born that way? Was it something that you saw in your parents? Was there something particularly that was motivating you to want to start working right away? And how have you seen that trait within yourself, propel you forward as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah, good question. My dad always worked really, really hard. He worked a 9 to 5 job, but he always worked extremely hard. He traveled a lot. And I still remember he would take me out and have me help him around the house and all that when I was very young. And every time I would put my hands in my pocket, if I felt like there was nothing to do, he would take whatever tool he had in his hand, and he would like slap me over my hand with while they were in the pocket, like, someone's working, you don't put your hands in the pocket, right? So I think, that was sort of, not saying that propelled me forward, but it definitely installed that mentality that you can't sit around doing nothing. Like, till this day, if someone else is doing something, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's, if it's some of my contractors are carrying in bags of cement or whatever, and I'm walking the same way they are, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a dress shirt or whatever it is, I'll pick up a bag of cement if I'm walking that direction, and I will put it on my shoulder, and I will drop it off wherever it needs to be dropped off. So that was installed for me very, very early on, and I think I still believe, even though I've seen a lot of great talent, raw talent out there, that hard work beats talent every single time. So you can't just be talented and hope that will take you through life. It definitely helps, but you need to work hard. So I think that's definitely something that I've taken with me, and I keep working hard. I think sometimes I get caught up in work for the sake of working, I think, if that makes sense. I focus too much on the small things here and there, and that's definitely one of my downfalls. And at the place we are right now with the company, where we're doing projects, larger conversion projects in Boston, in New York, and have more in the pipeline for 2024. I think it's important for me right now that we build a team that can take care of these smaller things, day-to-day operations, so that I can start wearing a bit fewer hats, if that makes sense, and focus on what is the great value drivers and the direction of our company. I think that's really important. But something I'm having a bit of a hard time doing, to be honest. I enjoy wearing a lot of hats, and I think that's probably part of the entrepreneurial DNA, right? You enjoy having your fingers in every single pot in your company. So it's something I have to learn. So,
yeah. No, and I think that's something that we hear often, that transition from wearing all the hats, being the one making the decisions, and kind of letting go and trusting people. But that's truly how you scale. I mean, and we've heard that time and time again from a lot of our other guests. My mind goes back to one other question just about your upbringing in the race time. We talk a lot about fear and how that holds people back. I want to attack fear from a little different angle with you, because you were willing to go for it and whatever it took to be successful. So I love that side. But as you were sharing your story and talking about how you had to raise $20,000, you didn't know how you were going to do that. You didn't have any money to your name. You were living in, hole in the wall type of place. When you were in that, was your mindset like, hey, I'm just happy to be here, I'll do whatever it takes? Or were there fears, or were there maybe a moment when you were like, man, what am I doing? Like, I've given up and sacrificed everything for this. So curious, just kind of your mindset and fear and kind of how you overcame that during that time frame.
Sure, sure. I think right after that race, like at that period, I was almost high all the time. Like not literally, but the feeling. And I could conquer the goddamn world right there. I was not scared of anything. Whatever came at me, I would be able to overcome. I was 100% certain of that. I think winning that race and going through that period, I learned that I and most people actually can do whatever they set their mind to if they want it enough. And so the question was not, can I do it? The question is, do I want it enough? And the answer to that was clear. Yes, I do. So at that point, I was not scared. Not at all. When I quit my job and moved to Moscow, on the other hand, I was scared shitless. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, how I was going to survive, how I was going to live, but I was very excited about the move. And I've had, fear has definitely been there, and I think everything is a calculated risk, right? Every investment we make is a calculated risk. Every move we make is a calculated risk, and I've done. I don't think I've done something that I was not comfortable with or sure that we could handle. So I've sort of kept the fear a little bit back. I think being scared doesn't get you anywhere. And if you're truly scared, then you made the wrong move. You need to take a step back.
Helpful paradigm. And I mean, it was really in that move to Moscow and making that step that's where your entrepreneurial endeavors really first started, right? I mean, that's kind of where you made the transition from taking all of the discipline that you'd learned through triathlon training and actually applying that to business. It's so my understanding of your first business was more of a kind of a service-based, almost kind of also sort of in the tourism industry of helping people train and experience Majorcas. Your second business was more of a commerce company. Does that sound right? Is with what you were doing with reselling European goods in Moscow, and then of course what you're doing now is self-storage. And so that's been kind of interesting to me that you've made a handful of jumps across different industries. And I'm curious just what you're looking for when you see opportunity. Because I imagine it's not purely random that you went from one to the other. And so what is the criteria that stuck out to you about each of those opportunities, or what are the kinds of things that you're looking for when you're like, yeah, this might be something I want to do or try?
Yeah, interesting. I think I actually started Vuelta a Mallorca, the traveling company, tourist company, earlier before I moved to Moscow, and that was, I think that was just, I did what I knew. Right, I knew I had the sponsors, I had the support to get this off the ground. So that was just an opportunity that I had and had the capabilities to do it. Again, at the time, I didn't have a single dollar to my name. So it needed to be something that I didn't need to put any capital into. And we built this up, and that was great. Then the same thing actually happened. I had a network. I had the sponsor network to start a company in Moscow that would bring all those goods in. So that was also just due to the nature of what I was currently doing. It was a natural extension of my brand as an athlete. Now, the move to self-storage was not a natural extension of that at all. right? Uh,
You mean Roca
and
and those big triathlon brands are not also in self storage?
not to my knowledge, not to my knowledge, but you never know. I've seen the weirdest companies being in self storage, I'll say. But
Sure,
I
sure.
mean, I also just like I want to stretch that. I have amazing support from my wife, right? She always been there. She has a W-2 job that, she did have a W-2 job. Now we work together, which is
Cool.
also a journey on its own. But she had a W-2 job at all times. And without her, there's no chance that I would be where we would be where we are today. Like that safety it
Mm.
provides definitely deserves recognition for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think that's important to a lot of people I know that's has an entrepreneurial spirit. They have a husband or wife who is, has that stable W-2 job and, sort of keeps it safe, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that can kind of help alleviate some of that fear. It
Yeah,
gives you the confidence to try different ventures, knowing you guys are going to be okay. And that's maybe part of that calculated thought process that you were sharing.
most definitely. I mean, we have a family to support, right? So we can't afford for things to go entirely wrong. Now, things have changed, and we're now working together entirely in our self-storage venture. And it's actually both a blessing and a challenge, right? I don't know if any of you have tried to work with your spouse, but like leaving things in the office is tough. When you have disagreements, when there are things that you want to take the company in one direction, she wants to take it in another direction. How do you just leave that and not discuss that at the dinner table, right? So that's something we're working through, and I think as the company grows and more employees come in, that becomes easier. But right now, when we are sole decision makers, it's tough. It's tough.
Sure.
Becomes a lot of work discussions. But I think
Mm.
going back to why we went into self storage was really we looked at we looked at a lot of different asset classes. We knew that we enjoyed doing residential real estate, and we had built a small portfolio at that time of like 7 properties or so. But we also knew that something like COVID came in. We saw that, right? And we could not evict any of the tenants if they stopped paying rent. And that scared us a
Mm.
little bit. So we wanted to diversify that portfolio into other income streams. So we decided that commercial property was a good way of doing that. Something that was not single tenant, we decided. So self-storage was that for us. Not that we had any prior experience in it or anything like that, but my wife is a former management consultant, so she did some work for Prim, and they dabbled into alternative asset classes, self-storage amongst them. So she got a little bit of exposure there, and I think that just made us more comfortable taking this step. So
Yeah.
We we talk a lot here on the show about educating yourself. We've had some attorneys who say, "Hey, get in, educate before you jump into different things." And I think you're kind of talking about that right now, where you're using the words like we explored it and we wanted to gain knowledge and experience of it. So curious what that education journey looked like, and when did you jump in? I mean, you mentioned David, you mentioned going to some conferences. What did that education period look like for you?
I think I probably hit up every single person who has something to do with storage that was within my vicinity. I mean,
Mm,
anyone who I could possibly reach, I would reach out to, ask, "Hey, you want to
mm,
sit down, have a cup of coffee? I want to know what you know, right?" And I mean, it's so valuable. People were willing to share,
yeah.
and I learned so much. I went on tours from people who converted self-storage facilities already. They invited me in, showed me around. Like even local competitors to where we were building our self-storage facility. I hit them up. I said, hey, we're going to be neighbors soon. This is going to happen. You know, let's get to know each other, huh? So I went over there and he showed me around, and they even share, yeah, we wish we had more of these units or less of these kind of units, or this is what we did wrong. We wish we had done that differently. Like, it was amazing. And I think, that's one of my goals as well as I have progressed in my journey. And I'm not even close to being, done with my journey, right? I want to do the same thing. Everyone who reaches out to me, I really try to sit down with them and give them my perspective on whatever it is. I help people underwrite if they reach out to me. A lot of people do. What do you think about this deal? What do you think about this? And so on, and I try to do what was done for me, because that was such an important step. Like, it was invaluable. I mean, you can buy all these courses from people who made it in self-storage, right? I don't want to mention any names because I don't have much good to say about them. I don't think it provides that long-term value as networking with people in the field on your closer to your level provides. Having someone who maybe owns 100 stores and are sitting at the top of the throne tell you about what he's currently doing and how he did it, that's just not where I was, and that wouldn't provide me the kind of value I could get from someone telling me about the 2 stores that he owned and how he got there and the mistakes that he made, right? So I think connecting with someone on my own level was just so important. Someone that's one step further in the journey that I can learn from. And I keep doing that today.
I mean, I love that, multiple levels. So both Nick and I really interested in self-storage. We've got a few different opportunities that we're actively pursuing. But as we've gotten there ourselves, we've taken a similar path of just trying to sit down with anybody and everybody who will talk to us about self-storage. And the thing that we've been so surprised about time and time again is the generosity of owners and operators with their time, information, the advice that they want to give. And I think to your point as well, it can be really overwhelming if you sit down with somebody who has built and owns and operates 100+ facilities versus just sitting down with a guy that has 2 or 3, because it's like, well, I don't need to go from 0 to 100 in the next 6 months. Like, I want to go from 0 to 1. And so the guy that's got 2 or 3 can actually perhaps speak to how to get to 1 in a much more like applied, understandable kind of way than the guru who, it's been 30 years since he started, and the industry and whatnot looks totally different. Speaking of the industry looking different, we hear all the time like, oh, self-storage, it's such a saturated market, and you missed the boat on that one. You really needed to be doing it in 2017, 2018. Obviously, here you are, you're doing it. You started doing your first conversion in 2021, right?
No, actually 2022.
Oh, so even more recently than that. Yeah. So I'm curious what that experience has been like as you've dealt with a lot of the noise, a lot of the cynicism about the opportunities within the class. And then I'd love for that to transition into this unique niche that you've found with conversions, because I think that is a different angle than perhaps most self-storage owner-operators have taken.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, speaking to the industry, I mean, naturally, I can't speak to how my life would have been if I had started building self-storage facilities in the 90s. I mean, so I was still wearing a diaper at the point. So, would, would I, would I have been in a different place today? Sure, I would. But isn't that the same for everything? I mean, it's always you look
Right.
back at, oh, I wish I started this earlier, or I should have done this 10 years ago. Yeah, sure, but you
Yeah, I
didn't.
wish I would have
So,
bought Bitcoin in 2012, but here
right,
we are.
right, I agree. So, I think it's kind of pointless to look back and say the boat has already sailed because that's definitely also not true. I mean, back then you build it and they will come is what I hear all the time, right? And that's probably how it was. It's not how it is anymore. However, there are still plenty of amazing markets out there. And we're building in Boston, we're building in upstate New York, and both markets are great. And there are many, many more out there. I think saturation is one thing, and a lot of people are saying, we don't want to build if it's more than 7 square feet per capita, or well, whatnot it is, right? And that's definitely a point, right? But I think what's even more valuable is probably looking at the price for a regular 10 by 10 to determine, how is the supply demand index. If the prices for a 10 by 10 is really high, then the demand probably follows. Then you can take a look at the square feet per capita. That's one thing. But the demand is there if they are able to keep prices high. So that's really something that we adapted a lot more than just looking at a square foot per capita metric. Also, we try to position our facilities in locations that are easily accessible because people plug it in to their GPS and they say, it only takes 5 minutes. It might be that they're 4 or 5 miles away, but if the trip is like 5-10 minutes, they're still within our range of customers. So by having that easy access, being on an off ramp, for example, from a highway, just expands your potential customer range beyond that 3 miles. So I think that's something that we adapted and something that I've learned along the way. The way I look at facilities and underwrite opportunities is ever changing as I learn. And the way I underwrote our first facility that I'm sitting in today is very, very different compared to how I underwrite facilities now. So now we are, back for this facility I'm sitting in now, we couldn't find any investors that were willing to go in with us. So we scrambled for capital and borrowed everything we possibly could and put it into this facility and did it on our own, proved the business case. And now we're working with investors and are dabbling into the PE world, which is a scary transition too, giving up some control, but we'll see where that ends up. But in short, there are many amazing markets. The boat has not sailed at all, in our opinion. And if you take a look at conversions, it just expands your opportunity for which markets can you build in, right? It might be harder to find a well-located building that works out and that you can get zoned and all that, but your cost of your basis for your investment is so much lower compared to if you were to either buy an existing facility or build from scratch, buy the land and build from scratch. So it, instead of having to see rents of $200 for a 10 by 10 to be able to make it work to do a ground up construction, you can go down and you can look at rents that are 130, 140 or so, and it opens up to a lot more markets where the big guys are not going to come in because the real big guys are not going to come in and build more because the numbers don't make sense to do a ground up, but they make sense for conversion. So I think that's our niche now. building in Boston, naturally that makes sense to most people if they can find the land. But I think that's
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that's why
Well,
we
I
really
I
chose
think that's huge.
conversions. Yeah, I think that's why we really chose conversions. I mean, you have so many markets that you can enter, and you have a project that instead of taking 2 years to get off the ground because you need entitlements and whatnot, you buy the building and you can literally be open 6 to 9 months, right? So it's an amazingly quick process that drastically decreases your holding costs. And now with the interest rates being higher than they were, it's just even more important to get cash flowing as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you want to talk us through what the conversion process looks like for somebody who is familiar with self storage but has no idea otherwise? What a conversion looks like.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
even the way that you could talk about it is through your first facility, the one that you're in now, and what that looked like, what the building started as, and what you did to convert it.
Yeah, I mean, the process for this facility, so it very much depends on the building. Very much so. We bought this building at a very good price, but it did have some issues that we needed to solve. So those issues we resolved pretty quickly. It was some rotten floors, some broken concrete, some columns that needed to be replaced, and so on. But getting that out of the way, really, it's demo. That's a large part of it. You demo it, you prep all the surfaces. If you need to do any structural improvements, you do that. And after that, in goes the metal partitions. I mean, it's a simple process.
Yep.
And yes, there are things in between there, small things here and there. You need to add a bathroom, you need to do this or that. But really, those are the big ones. And I think it's such a simple process, but there's still so much that can go wrong. So that's one of the things that we are now doing differently, is that before we close on the building, we already spent $150,000 on pre-construction drawings, everything, investigations into the building, knowing exactly what happens when we opens up the different walls. We are not going to hit, a burial ground or whatnot inside the walls or what it might be, right? So we try to take as many unknowns out as possible, because that's the concern with these conversion projects. You never know what happens when you start opening up the walls and whatever else you open up. So that was just, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time when we built this facility. So we bought it not having any drawings or any pre-construction investigations done, and started the process. It took us 9 months, and it was a chaotic process for this facility, but pretty good actually. Kept on budget, on time, but it was again, a lot of setbacks and then solving those issues, and it was a full-time job for me. One thing I will definitely do is always choose a contractor that has experience in self-storage. I did not do that for our first facility here, and that was definitely a mistake.
And what did the building start as before you converted it?
It was a gun manufacturing facility. So
okay.
Way back in the days, they manufactured shells for guns. Actually, we have 4 gun vaults here, like walk-in gun vaults.
Nice.
And story goes that they were supposed to have each part of the gun stored in a separate vault, such that if someone broke in, they had to break into all 4 vaults to assemble a gun, right?
Wow.
So we kept them, and I outfitted them with biometric fingerprint scanners. So now I'm actually renting them out to like wine enthusiasts and whatever else. So
I love
collectors
it.
and
That's
stuff like
so
that for a
cool.
premium. Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's great.
Well, when you're talking finger biometrics, I was about to say you got the most secure self storage facility in the country.
Maybe the most secure units, but it literally is a bank vault. It literally is like a bank vault, and then you put your finger on, you type in your code, and then it clicks, and you can open it, right? So yeah, that's a fun
That's
process.
awesome.
Yeah,
No doubt.
yeah. So
What, Casper, a question that I had for you was you had mentioned having a few single family properties. You were doing some of the construction work and then decided to go commercial. I think a lot of people have the limiting belief of, well, commercial real estate, it's too big, it's too expensive, I don't have enough money. You've jumped in and went for it. So curious, just speak to that a little bit, maybe some of those limiting beliefs that people have.
yeah, I mean, it's a different animal altogether, right? It's valued differently. It's definitely take your time, get to know the market, get to know whatever niche of commercial you want to jump into. Like commercial property, like that's just a huge umbrella, right? Take a look at what makes sense to you.
Yep.
Perhaps an extension of something you already have experience in, already know something about, right? And go into that. But yeah, it is different. It's a different risk profile. Like another asset class that we looked at was Class C industrial. So the play was to take a Class C building that was in a Class B location because you can't change the location and upgrade it with the amenities that would turn it into a Class B industrial and then sell it, make the spread, right? So that was another thing we were thinking about. But I really think if you already own some single family and you've done that for a while and then you have access to some sort of capital. If it's through selling your single family, if it's through refi, if it's through like we took loans out on every single property we had to do this. Like we scrambled for capital.
Yeah.
Really scrambled for capital. And we had relationship with the bank that believed in us. And I don't want to use the word we got lucky because I fundamentally do not believe in luck. But we definitely struck the right situations at the right time. And after, pulling money out of every single asset we had enough capital to close on the loan and the construction loan for this, for the first storage facility, right? So I think it really is the step from residential to commercial. Yes, it's more money for sure, but there's a lot more upside, and there's a lot less work involved with owning a commercial property. If it's a single tenant, triple net, like determine how much time you want to spend on it. Do you want to spend every day operating it? Then perhaps you can do self-storage and you can build a self-storage facility. If you want to just buy something that you can leave alone and the tenant in there will pay on time and it's all good and great, then a triple net property is probably the way to go, some sort of triple net property. So I think there is a way, if you already own property, that you can get the capital needed. Start small. Start where you're comfortable. Commercial properties come in all shapes and sizes, from a few $100,000 to a few $100 million or more, right? So I think there is something that depends on where you are in your journey, but there is something for everyone to invest in, and just stay within your comfort level, I think, is probably pretty important.
Good. Really good advice. I love it. I know time wise here we're kind of getting close to wrapping up, but one more question that I have before Nick takes us to the final round of golden nugget questions is just what the vision is for you now, moving forward? You've talked about expanding with a lot more conversion projects and doing that. Sounds like all over the East Coast. You've got a great network of people around you. I mean, do you see years and years ahead of you of running in this space, or are the wheels already starting to turn on other opportunities, and this is kind of a launch pad into something else that you're hoping to do 5-10 years down the road?
No, I think I definitely see us staying in this sector. So we're at a point in our company where, again, like I said, we can stay where we are and move one property at a time slowly, wearing all the hats ourselves, keeping it lean, or we can start taking a partnership with another firm, a funding firm, like a PE firm or something like that, and take it to the next level, start getting some infrastructure, a team in place. So that's what we are actively working on right now. Having some certainty of funding for our deals going forward without having to spend weeks and months on raising the capital from real estate, from retail investors, $50,000 at a time, really is going to be an important factor in what we are aiming to do for 2024. But I do see ourselves building a portfolio of self-storage conversion properties in the Northeast, and perhaps do an UPREIT transaction down the road. But as long as it makes sense, we will continue to rinse and repeat. We do have a plan of diversifying our income stream, though, and that is what we are currently working on as well. Some passive investments in other sectors, as well as starting a support company. That one of the things we faced, the biggest issue for us was really developing professional materials, like really professional materials to show investors.
Yeah.
And those materials were just either ridiculously expensive or something boilerplate, basically crap coming out that looked like everything else that didn't really tell the story, right? So we founded a small company that operates out of Europe, actually, with a team in Europe that takes care of this for aspiring sponsors. So at a decent price, does videos and everything, and I think it's going to be a really cool support function to our business, as well as an offering to others.
Yeah, I like that. Is a vertical integration, or just being able to create something that's both going to serve your business, but hopefully pay for itself because of the support that you'll be able to provide to other businesses as well. That's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important, like to diversify our income stream a little bit. So that's what we're aiming to do. So yeah.
Well, Nick, you want to take us to Golden Nuggets, my man?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Casper, we're going to wrap the show up here with the last 4 questions we ask all of our guests. And so I'm going to just kind of fire them at you here. Pick one of these, and I'm going to give you 5 options, and tell us what you're doing to improve yourself this year. So at Abundant Journey, we talk about the journey we're on. So one of the 5 F's, so it's family, finance, faith, fitness, and future. We've covered a lot of these today, but pick one of these and tell us how you're excited for 2024 and looking to grow.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of those. So I'm gonna pick. Yeah. I'm gonna pick fitness. So
I like it.
I'm telling you, when I moved here, and I'm like, it's not that long ago, in 2020, I was very, very fit. I don't know in pounds, like below 70 kilograms. I don't know what that is in pounds, but I've never converted. I'll completely
150 pounds, right about there.
Yeah, something like that. Yes. And I've never converted from kilograms to pound. I learned the foot and all that stuff, but you guys, I mean, you guys need to stop the foot and the pounds and all that. So, but that's a different discussion. So
I
that's not for
agree
today.
with you. All right.
So,
I agree. Yeah.
so yeah, get real, US, please. But no. So no, and now after having lived here in the US for 3 years, 4 years now, I guess, I'm like 230 pounds. What the heck happened, right? So yeah, I don't exercise as much anymore, I'll admit, but there's something in the food here that's not in Europe, I'll tell you. So that's my goal, is definitely to get that routine back. I'm working a lot of hours and I'm working really hard these days to grow our company, and it's my sole focus. But I also know that for me to be successful as a human being and comfortable within my own skin, I need to be in decent shape. It affects a lot, both energy level and self-perception, and I think that's definitely one of the things that's my goal for 2024, is get that routine back. I still get up at 5 a.m. every morning to work, but I think it's just such an important thing, and whatever energy you put in to exercise, I remember it, whatever energy you put into that, go to the gym, whatever is your kink, right? Whatever energy you put into that, you get back tenfold. Like coming out from that morning training, you are so energized, right? So that's not that I have to go back to 150 pounds and six pack and not a gram of fat on me. That's not the goal. I'm not there anymore, right? I'm almost 30. I'm turning 30 in a few days. I'm turning 30, but but definitely also not 230 pounds. And the dad butt that I've developed is definitely also not where I want to be.
There you go.
So I think that's important.
That's a good goal.
Yeah, it is. It's not as deep as many others, but it's something that I know will propel me forward, also in business as well as personal life. So it's something that's gotten lost along the way.
It's all connected, and it's good to recognize that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, next one here, you gave us one of your favorite quotes early on, which I love. So if something else comes to you, great. If not, no big deal. But what's a quote from a book or mentor that stuck with you along your journey?
Yeah. I do think I really want to bring that quote up that I mentioned before, because it is just something that I remember every time there's something hard I have to do. I remember that in order to do what others can't, you have to sacrifice or be willing to do what others won't, right? And I just, every time I have to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, or whatever it might be, or do something that I really just don't want to do, I think about this quote. I think back to the look in my coach's eyes when he told me this. He was dead serious, like dead serious. And he's been doing that his entire life, and I think that will stay with me, hopefully for a very, very long time. And I can pass it on to my children, that mentality of hard work and being willing to sacrifice for what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I love that. And I don't think that quote could be said enough. I mean, it's a daily reminder. So what a great one here to end on. Next one, what is a dream or goal that you have that you've not been able to accomplish yet?
I think there are a lot of aspects that make a person. A lot of areas in one's life that make a person, right? You can excel in all these different areas of life, but it's very hard to do at the same time. It's very hard to improve all aspects at the same time. And I think that being able to being able to focus on other aspects of my life at the same time as, how do I say this? I become very focused on one aspect. For example, right now I'm very focused on excelling my company, right? Growing my company, getting these deals done. And I spend a lot of time on that. And every single day my focus is that. But then I lose myself on the fitness level. I'm not the best husband all the time. I don't spend all the time I want with my wife, right? So I think being able to not transfer my focus, but add focus to the other aspects of life and make myself a more complete person is a goal that I want to achieve. Like when I was doing professional athlete, that's what I was doing. I had no friends left. I had nothing. That's what I did. That was my focus 100%. So I need to be able to focus on several aspects of my life. And that's a goal that I just haven't been able to achieve yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. And I think a lot of people feel that tension, whether you have a family with kids, Nick and I both have young kids,
Me too.
or be married, or even just other things that have needs and time and space. And so always continuing to juggle that. That's a great goal to keep working on. And I don't know that we ever master it fully. So I love that one. Last question here. At the end of your life, what do you hope you'll be remembered for?
It's a good question. I think at the end of my life, what I want to be remembered for, it's probably just having provided the right sort of circumstances for my family, not monetarily or anything, but having been a good husband, a good father, left a footprint behind that people will remember me as a kind person who enjoyed what he did and gave back as much as he could, and gave people a chance. I think I wouldn't be here today unless people who I met gave me a chance, even sometimes when they probably shouldn't have, right? And I think that's how I want to be remembered, not judging the book by its cover, but getting to know a person before I make a decision, giving them a chance to prove who they are and what they can bring to the table. I think that's super important. I mean, I don't have the most impressive background when you're thinking about it educationally. So a lot of people took a chance on me. And I think that's something I definitely want to keep alive and want to be remembered for. Never being this judgmental person that didn't give the people around me a chance.
It's a fantastic response, man. And I mean, that's one of the beauties of entrepreneurship, is the ability that it gives you to create opportunities for others. It's just such a cool thing. A lot of people think of entrepreneurship as just building something for yourself, but the reality is once you've achieved some degree of success, you then have the opportunity to create pathways for others to follow. And I appreciate the ways that you're already doing that, in the generosity of your time, taking an hour to sit down with us and share about your story and your experiences. And I know that as you continue to network and meet people, and as you grow in your own experience and influence in this space, you're going to have a lot more other people who are looking to do their first facility, and they're going to be asking, all right, how did you get your first few? And just don't forget us when you're starting your multi-$1,000 mentorship program. All right. No.
Yeah, I don't think it will ever get to that, and it's really been a true pleasure speaking to you guys. I mean, I really like what you guys are doing. Like, getting people out there. And I've never been on a podcast before. It's been really great.
Well, you're a natural, man. Thank you so much. If people do want to connect with you, follow along with your journey, see some of the stuff that you're doing with self-storage conversions, do you have any spots where you'd send them, websites or social media profiles?
Yeah, of course. They are more than welcome to look me up on LinkedIn or any other place that they could possibly find me. Our website, bahlmanngroup.com, also has both a little bit of about what we're doing and also my personal contact information. Cool. So reach out, please.
That's awesome. I will include those links in the show notes, listeners. So do connect with Casper on there and follow along. And while you're in your browser looking him up, make sure you also pop over to abundantjourney.net. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please be sure to do so. And if you enjoyed anything that you heard here, benefited from it, well, the best way that you can show us some love is by sharing the episode with somebody else who you think would benefit from it or enjoy it. At the very least, if you could click that 5-star button on your podcast player of choice, that helps more people discover the show and inspire others in their entrepreneurial journeys. So that's all we got for this week. Look forward to being back with everybody again very soon. Once again, Casper, you're the man. Thank you so much, and all the best to you in your continued endeavors in this space.